The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such celebration. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the massive chamber, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic pulses, and spoken words. The translation matrix worked overtime to keep everyone connected, but the emotion needed no translation. Pure joy radiated from nearly every delegate present. Ambassador Zethor of the Vrexian Empire stood at the central podium, his golden scales gleaming under the hall's artificial suns. His 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of triumph that his people had used for 10,000 years. Behind him, the massive display screen showed the freshly signed document, the Treaty of Cessation. Today, Zethor announced, his voice carrying the deep rumble of his kind, we have achieved what many thought impossible. We have brought order to chaos. We have contained the threat before it could grow beyond control. The crowd erupted in approval. Counselor Miraseth of the Zephyrite Collective, her crystalline form refracting light into rainbow patterns, added her own statement. For 200 years, we have watched the humans with growing concern. They arrived in our galaxy like a storm, always building, always expanding, always preparing for war. Their military growth exceeded all reasonable bounds. They placed weapons where we sought peace. They saw enemies where we saw friends. She paused, letting her words sink in. But today, they have finally agreed to our terms. Total withdrawal from Council space. Decommission of their excessive fleet. Return to their home system. They will no longer destabilize our carefully maintained balance. More cheers filled the hall. Only a small section remained quiet. A few dozen representatives from minor worlds sat in silence, their faces or equivalent features showing concern rather than joy. At the very back of the chamber, in the section reserved for those departing council membership, sat Ambassador Elena Vasquez of Earth. She was a small woman by human standards, barely over 5 feet tall, with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun. Her dark eyes watched the celebration, with an expression that none of the aliens could quite read. Humans were still too new, too foreign. Their faces remained mysterious to most council members. The Catharan representative, an ancient being whose species had been part of the council for 3 million years, floated near the podium. Its form was difficult to describe, shifting between states of matter in ways that hurt to observe directly. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in the minds of all present. We must acknowledge, the Catharan stated, that this was not an easy decision. The humans have been useful in certain capacities. However, their refusal to accept council wisdom, their insistence on maintaining military readiness in times of peace, and their constant interference in matters that did not concern them, left us no choice. A peaceful galaxy cannot tolerate such dangerous unpredictability. Ambassador Vasquez stood. The hall quieted slightly, curious to hear the humans' response. Many expected anger, perhaps threats, maybe even a dramatic withdrawal of the signature. Humans were known for their emotions, after all. Vasquez walked slowly to the podium. She was offered the speaking platform, and she accepted it with a small nod. When she spoke, her voice was calm, almost gentle. The people of Earth have heard the Council's concerns, she said. We have listened to your fears about our military. We have noted your discomfort with our presence. We understand that you see us as dangerous, as disruptive, as too willing to act when you prefer discussion. She paused, looking around the chamber. Her eyes seemed to linger on the quiet section, the worried delegates who had voted against the treaty. We respect the Council's right to govern itself, Vasquez continued. We respect your sovereignty and your decisions. You have asked us to leave, and so we will leave. You have asked us to withdraw, and so we withdraw. The treaty is signed. We will honor every word of it. Zethor's scales rippled with satisfaction. You accept the terms without dispute? We accept them completely, Vasquez replied. Within 6 months, every human presence will be removed from Council space. Every station, every ship, every installation. We will leave them in perfect working order for you. We will provide full documentation for all systems we have maintained. We will depart quietly and completely. And your military? Miraseth asked, her crystalline voice sharp. Will be withdrawn to Sol system, as requested. We will maintain only what is necessary for the defense of our own worlds. This is unexpected, the Catharan admitted. We anticipated resistance. Vasquez smiled slightly. It was not a happy expression, but not an angry one either. Something else entirely. We are not children who must be forced to respect the wishes of others. You have made your choice. We will respect it. She stepped down from the podium and returned to her seat. The celebration resumed, but some of the joy had become tinged with confusion. The human had agreed too easily. Where was the fight? Where was the famous human stubbornness? In the following hours, the treaty was officially entered into council law. The departure timeline was established. Protocols were created for the handover of facilities. Everything was documented with the precision that had made the council function for millions of years. Vasquez signed each document without comment. When asked questions, she provided clear, helpful answers. When offered the chance to negotiate terms, she simply shook her head. The treaty is acceptable as written, she repeated each time. As the session ended and delegates began to leave, Councillor Tereth of Proxima 7 approached Vasquez. Tereth was one of the few who had voted against the treaty. His people had worked closely with humans for 50 years. Elena, he said quietly, using her first name as humans preferred, is Earth truly willing to simply walk away? Vasquez looked at him with those unreadable eyes. The Council has made its decision, Tereth. Who are we to argue with the combined wisdom of 1,000 worlds? But the work you do can be done by others. That is the Council's choice to make now. I fear we are making a mistake. Vasquez placed a hand on his shoulder, a very human gesture of comfort. Then you should speak loudly in Council sessions. Make your concerns known. That is how your system works, yes? They will not listen to me. Then that is also their choice. She squeezed his shoulder gently. Do not worry for us, friend. Humanity will survive. We always do. She left the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. Behind her, the celebration continued, but Tereth stood alone, watching her go, a cold feeling of dread settling in his chest. He could not explain it, could not put it into words his fellow counselors would understand. But he knew with absolute certainty that something terrible had just been set in motion. The humans had agreed too easily. They had accepted terms that should have sparked outrage. Let go. And in all his years of knowing humans, Tereth had learned one essential truth. When humans stopped fighting for something, it was not because they had given up. It was because they had decided it was not worth saving anymore. The celebration in the Great Hall continued long into the night. Agreements were made, alliances were strengthened, and countless delegates congratulated themselves on their diplomatic victory. None of them noticed the small human ships already beginning to depart from council stations across the galaxy. The withdrawal had begun immediately. The humans were wasting no time. They had been asked to leave, and so they were leaving. Silently, efficiently, and completely. Station Chief Korvax stood in the main control room of Frontier Station 7, watching the last human transport ship detach from the docking ring. The ship moved with the gentle precision that human vessels always displayed, its engines barely glowing as it maneuvered away from the station. They are very efficient, his assistant Pela observed. I expected more drama. Korvax nodded. In the 3 months since the treaty signing, He had watched dozens of human facilities across the sector shut down and evacuate. Every single time, the process had been the same. Orderly, quiet, professional. The humans left behind detailed instruction manuals, fully stocked supply rooms, and working equipment. They even cleaned before they left. The humans understand contracts, Korvax said. They signed the treaty, they honor it. What Korvax did not say, because he had not yet realized it himself, was that the humans were not just leaving their official posts. They were leaving everything. Dr. Sarah Chen had run the small medical clinic on level 43 of Frontier 7 for 12 years. It was not an official council facility. She had simply shown up one day, set up equipment, and started treating anyone who needed help. The council had never paid her. She had never asked for payment. She just worked. Now her clinic was empty. The equipment was gone, the supplies removed, the space bare. A sign on the door read, "Thank you for 12 wonderful years. Stay healthy, Dr. Chen." 3 levels down, the engineering workshop that Marcus Webb had operated was similarly empty. For a decade, Marcus had fixed everything from personal datapads to life support systems. He charged nothing. He just liked fixing things, he always said. Now the workshop was closed, and the half-dozen repair jobs that had been waiting for him sat untouched. Across the galaxy, this pattern repeated thousands of times. On the agricultural world of Vex Prime, Administrator Keltha walked through her colony's main water purification plant. The human engineer who had maintained it, Tom Rodriguez, had left 2 weeks ago. He had trained her staff before leaving, given them detailed manuals, even recorded video instructions. But already, Keltha could see small problems developing. A pressure valve that was not quite right, a filter that was showing stress, things that Tom would have fixed before they became problems. "We will manage," she told herself firmly. "We are not children. We can maintain our own systems." But privately, she wondered why the plant had never had these small issues when Tom was there. He had seemed to spend most of his time drinking coffee and chatting with the staff. She had never actually seen him work very hard. Yet somehow, nothing had ever broken. In the Zephyrite merchant corridors, Captain Lithara prepared her trading vessel for another run through the Kelvin Passage. It was a route she had traveled for 30 years. Profitable, but dangerous. Pirates occasionally attacked, though not often. The Council patrol ships kept the route mostly safe. She checked the current patrol schedule and frowned. The next Council ship would not arrive in the sector for another 8 days. That was unusual. The schedule had always been tighter than that. What Lithara did not know was that for the past 5 years, human patrol ships had been covering the gaps in the Council's schedule. They had never announced their presence. They had simply been there, quiet and watchful. When pirates approached, the humans had dealt with them efficiently and without fuss. They had never filed reports or claimed credit. Now they were gone, and the gaps in the patrol schedule were suddenly very visible. On the scientific outpost at Kepler Station, researcher Vinthala made an interesting discovery. For the past 20 years, her team had been studying stellar radiation patterns. Their data had always been remarkably accurate, better than similar stations elsewhere. She had assumed it was because of their excellent equipment. While reviewing old files after the human departure, she found something curious. A series of small satellites in high orbit around their station, all transmitting correction data to their instruments. The satellites were not listed in any council database. When she checked their origin, she found a small manufacturer's plate, property of Sol Systems Survey Corps, installed 2403. Maintenance log available on request. The humans had been quietly improving her data for 2 decades. She had won awards based on that data, published papers, built her reputation, and she had never known the humans were helping. The satellites were gone now, removed when the humans left. Her latest readings were notably less accurate. These small discoveries happened across hundreds of worlds. The pieces of invisible infrastructure that humans had built and maintained without fanfare were suddenly absent. In the council chambers, Ambassador Zethor reviewed reports from across council space. There were more complaints than usual. Minor issues mostly. Equipment failures, slight increases in crime. Small problems with food production on some colonies. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that suggested a crisis. Some adjustment is to be expected, he told the council. The humans are gone. We must adapt to doing things ourselves again. This is natural. Councillor Miraseth agreed. These small problems are temporary. We governed the galaxy for millions of years before the humans arrived. We will do so again. Only Councillor Tereth remained concerned. He had been collecting reports from his own contacts across council space. The pattern he saw worried him deeply. The problems are not random, he argued at a small session with trusted colleagues. They are all things the humans were quietly handling. Medical response times are slower because human medical ships are gone. Pirate attacks are increasing because human patrols are gone. Infrastructure is failing because human engineers are gone. You give them too much credit, Zethor responded. They were one species among hundreds. Their contribution was not so great. Then why are so many things breaking now that they are gone? Coincidence, ordinary maintenance cycles. These things happen. Tereth wanted to argue further, but he could see it was useless. The council had made its decision. They would not admit doubt now. On Earth, in the rebuilt city of Geneva, the Human Council Liaison Office had become something different. It was now the Archive of Service, a massive database of every contribution humans had made to council space over 200 years. Director James Walsh walked through the halls, looking at the endless records. Medical interventions that saved millions. Engineering solutions that prevented disasters. Scientific discoveries shared freely. Conflicts mediated. Pirates stopped. Dangers detected and neutralized. Did we do the right thing? His assistant asked. Just leaving them? Walsh sighed. They asked us to leave. Demanded it, actually. What were we supposed to do? Stay where we were not wanted? We could have explained better. Shown them what we were doing. We tried, Walsh said quietly. For decades we tried. We offered to share patrol duties officially. They said we were being paranoid. We offered to create joint maintenance programs. They said we were being controlling. We warned about the ancient defense networks. They said we were fear-mongering. He gestured at the archives around them. Every single thing in here we tried to do openly. They rejected it. So we did it quietly instead, because it needed to be done. And now they have asked us to stop. And so we have stopped. And if they collapse without us? Walsh's expression hardened. Then they collapse. That is their choice to make. Across human space, this same conversation was happening in many places. Some humans wanted to return, to help, despite the treaty. But the decision had been made at the highest levels of human government. The treaty would be honored, completely. If the council wanted humans gone, then humans would be gone. 6 months after the treaty signing, the last official human presence in council space departed. The embassy on the council homeworld closed. The final transport ships left. The last human diplomat crossed back into Sol system territory. Behind them, they left clean facilities, organized files, and detailed instructions. They left no mess, no chaos, no visible damage. But they also left gaps. Thousands of small gaps where human activity had been. Most were not noticeable yet. Some were just beginning to show. A few were already causing problems. The Galactic Council governed on, confident in their decision. The humans were gone. The dangerous element had been removed. Order was restored. They did not yet understand what they had done to themselves. But they would learn. Time would teach them what the humans had been too polite to say out loud. That sometimes the things you notice least are the things you need most. And sometimes you only understand what someone was doing for you after they stopped doing it. The first real crisis came 8 months after the human withdrawal. Captain Lithara's ship, the Bright Prophet, burned in the darkness of space. Half her crew was dead. The other half was trying desperately to keep the remaining life support systems running. Around them, 3 pirate vessels circled like predators, their weapons still hot from the attack. Lithara sent out the emergency distress call, knowing it would take hours for any council ship to arrive. The nearest patrol was 2 systems away. In the old days, before the humans left, help would have been there in minutes. She had never questioned why. Now she understood. The pirates understood too. They were taking their time, stripping the cargo holds leisurely. They knew no one was coming to stop them. This same scene was playing out across dozens of trade routes. Pirate attacks had increased by 300% in 6 months. The Council's security force was overwhelmed, stretched across territories they had never had to fully patrol before. Ships were being lost. Traders were dying. Entire shipping lanes were being abandoned. In the council chambers, Ambassador Zekthor faced angry merchants and shipping company representatives. His scales had lost some of their golden shine. He looked tired. "We are allocating more resources to security," he promised. "We are training more patrol crews. We are establishing new response protocols." "People are dying now," shouted one merchant. "My brother's ship was destroyed last week. 15 crew members, gone. Where were your patrols?" "We are doing everything we can." "The humans would have been there." Silence fell across the chamber. It was the first time anyone had said it out loud in an official session. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Councillor Miraseth spoke carefully. "The humans maintained an excessive military presence. We all agreed it was unnecessary. It was keeping us alive," the merchant said bitterly. "That seems pretty necessary to me." On Vex Prime, Administrator Keltha faced a different kind of crisis. The water purification plant had finally broken down completely. The pressure issue she had noticed months ago had cascaded into a full system failure. Now, 300,000 colonists had no clean water. She stood in the plant's control room, surrounded by technicians who were all staring at control panels that made no sense. The manuals Tom Rodriguez had left were thorough, but they assumed a level of technical knowledge her staff simply did not have. They were farmers and administrators, not engineers. "Can we fix it?" she asked her chief technician. He shook his head. "I do not even understand what is broken. These systems are too complex. Tom maintained them for so long that we never learned how they really work." Keltha contacted the Council Engineering Corps, requesting emergency assistance. They added her to a waiting list. 17 other worlds had similar problems. All of them had relied on human engineers. All of them were now discovering that their own people could not simply take over. The Council was sending help, but it would take weeks. Her people needed water now. In desperation, Keltha composed a message to Tom Rodriguez. She did not know if he would receive it. She did not know if humans even accepted messages from Council space anymore. But she had to try. The response came 3 days later. It was not from Tom. It was from an automated system. The recipient is no longer available for consultation outside Sol System territory. Please refer to the documentation provided during transition. Earth respects the Council's request for complete separation. 300,000 people began rationing water that day. Some would die before the Council engineers arrived. At the Catharin Research Facility, Chief Scientist Vexmar made a discovery that turned his 3 hearts cold with fear. The ancient defense network, the one left behind by a species that had died out 5 million years ago, was activating. For decades, the network had been dormant. The Catharin had known it existed, but considered it a historical curiosity. The ancient weapons had not functioned for millions of years. There was no reason to worry about them, except they were functioning now. Vexmar pulled up the old files, searching for any mention of the network. He found a report from 30 years ago, written by a human xenoarchaeologist named Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. The report was dense with technical details, but the summary was clear. It was being actively suppressed by a series of electromagnetic pulses generated from satellites in strategic positions throughout the sector. The report noted that the satellites would require regular maintenance and that the suppression system should be considered critical infrastructure. The report had been filed and apparently forgotten by the Council administration, but attached to it was a maintenance log showing that Dr. Okonkwo and her team had been servicing the satellites every 6 months for 30 years. The last maintenance date was 7 months ago, just before the human withdrawal. Vexmar checked the satellite network. Half the satellites were already offline, the rest would fail within weeks, and without them, the ancient defense network was waking up. He sent an urgent message to the Council, marking it maximum priority. He attached all the documentation. He begged for immediate action. The Council's response came in the form of a committee assignment. A study group would be formed to evaluate the threat level. A report would be generated. Recommendations would be made. The process would take approximately 6 months. "We do not have 6 months," Vexmar screamed at his communication console. But the console did not answer. The Council worked at its own pace, following procedures that had been established over millions of years. Those procedures had never accounted for the humans quietly handling urgent problems in the background. In the medical sectors, Dr. Yara Helsing reviewed the epidemic reports with growing horror. A plague had broken out on 3 Zephyrite agricultural worlds. The disease was spreading fast, killing thousands. The Council medical teams were responding, but they were weeks behind the infection curve. She pulled up the medical databases, searching for any previous occurrence of this disease. She found nothing in the official records. But in a footnote on a report from 10 years ago, she found a reference to Project Immunity, run by the Human Medical Corps. Following the reference took her to a restricted database. It took her security clearance and 3 hours of searching to access it. What she found inside made her want to scream. For 50 years, human medical teams had been quietly tracking and preventing dozens of potential epidemics. They had identified diseases before they spread, developed vaccines, and distributed them through routine medical visits to colonies across Council space. They had done this without fanfare, without public announcements, without asking for credit. The plague now killing Zephyrites was one of those diseases. The humans had been inoculating populations against it for 20 years. When they left, the inoculation program stopped. Now, a generation of Zephyrites who had never been vaccinated was vulnerable. Dr. Helsing found the vaccine formula in the human files. She sent it to the Council medical manufacturers immediately. They informed her that it would take 4 months to produce enough vaccine for the affected populations. Thousands would die waiting. The reports kept coming. Infrastructure failures on 40 worlds, food production problems on a dozen agricultural planets, communication network disruptions, power grid instabilities, environmental system breakdowns. Every single problem traced back to something the humans had been quietly maintaining. Counselor Tereth compiled all the reports into a single document. It was 3,000 pages long. He presented it to the full council, demanding emergency action. "We need to contact Earth," he said. "We need to ask them to come back. We need their help." Ambassador Zethor's scales had faded to a dull bronze. He looked 10 years older than he had at the treaty signing, but his pride remained intact. "We will solve these problems ourselves," he declared. "We are the Galactic Council. We have governed for millions of years. We do not need the humans. We are dying without them," Tereth said quietly. "We are adjusting," Zethor insisted. "These are temporary problems. We will adapt." "How many have to die while we adapt?" The question hung in the chamber. No one answered it. Counselor Mirazeth attempted to bridge the divide, Perhaps we could send a delegation to Earth, not to ask them back, but to consult, to seek their advice on these specific technical matters. Several messages were sent to Earth. They were all polite, carefully worded requests for technical consultation on matters of mutual interest. The responses were equally polite. Earth respects the Treaty of Cessation. All human activity has been withdrawn from Council space, as requested. We hope the Council finds solutions to its current challenges. We are confident in your abilities to govern yourselves. No offers of help, no suggestions, no advice. Just polite acknowledgement and respect for the treaty. The humans had withdrawn completely. They had honored every word of the agreement. They were doing exactly what the Council had demanded. And the Council was discovering what that actually meant. In the trading corridors, ships burned. On agricultural worlds, people went hungry. In medical facilities, patients died of preventable diseases. In research stations, ancient weapons awakened. Across hundreds of worlds, systems broke down. The galaxy was unraveling, and the threads that had been holding it together were finally visible. They had all been woven by human hands, and those hands were gone. 1 year after the human withdrawal, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The Grand Chamber that had celebrated the Treaty of Cessation now held only half its usual attendance. Many delegations could not spare representatives. They were dealing with crises at home. Ambassador Zethor no longer stood at the central podium. He had resigned 3 months earlier after the Vrexian Empire's colonial administration collapsed. In his place stood Councillor Miraseth, though her crystalline form had developed dark fractures that spoke of immense stress. "We must face the reality of our situation," she said, her voice lacking its former confidence. "The Council is failing." The admission hung in the air. No one contradicted her. The numbers told the story. 47 colony worlds had been abandoned in the past year. 16 species had withdrawn from the Council entirely, closing their borders and retreating to their home systems. Trade volume had decreased by 60%. Medical crises were ongoing on 32 worlds, and the ancient defense network had destroyed 2 major colonies completely. "The Turvan system is gone," Miraseth continued. 2 billion inhabitants. The ancient weapons destroyed everything. Our military could not stop them. Our scientists could not deactivate them. The technology is too old, too advanced. We do not understand it. Councillor Tereth stood slowly. He looked exhausted. The humans understood it. They had been managing it for decades. "The humans are gone," Miraseth said. "We must accept that and find our own solutions." "What solutions?" Tereth gestured at the half-empty chamber. "We have tried everything. We have allocated resources, formed committees, hired experts, researched solutions. Nothing works. We do not have the knowledge base the humans had. We do not have their technical expertise. We do not have their response capability." In the military sectors, Fleet Commander Jaltor reviewed the tactical situation with grim acceptance of reality. 3 separate wars had erupted in the past 6 months. Former Council allies were fighting each other over border disputes, resource rights, and old grievances. In the past, human diplomats had mediated these conflicts. Jaltor had not even known they were doing it. The humans had worked quietly, talking to all sides, finding compromises, preventing wars before they started. They had a strange talent for it, an ability to understand what each species needed and find solutions that satisfied everyone enough to maintain peace. Now those diplomats were gone, and decades of suppressed conflicts were exploding into open warfare. The Council's own military was too small and too scattered to intervene effectively. They had relied on the implicit threat of human military power to keep the peace. Most species had not wanted to start wars when heavily armed human warships might show up to enforce Council law. But there were no human warships anymore. The deterrent was gone. "We are losing control," Jaltor reported to the Council. "The Vrexian-Kelvani conflict has spread to 4 systems. The Zephyrite civil war shows no signs of ending, and the Proxima rebellion has cut off 3 major trade routes. We do not have the forces to restore order." On Vex Prime, Administrator Keltha sat in her office and stared at the evacuation orders. The water crisis had never been fully resolved. Then the food production systems failed. Then the power grid developed cascading problems. Now the entire colony was being abandoned. 300,000 people were leaving the world their families had lived on for 6 generations. They were scattering to other systems, becoming refugees, hoping to find places that would take them in. Keltha had sent 17 messages to Tom Rodriguez over the past year. None had received a response beyond the automated reply. She understood why. The treaty was clear. The humans had agreed to stay away. They were honoring that agreement. But understanding did not make it hurt any less. She composed one final message. "Tom, I know you will not respond. I know you cannot help. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what you were doing all those years. I thought you just liked fixing things. I did not realize you were holding our entire world together. Thank you for the decade you gave us. I am sorry we did not appreciate it until it was gone. I hope you are well. I hope Earth is thriving. I hope you never regret the years you spent helping people who did not deserve your help." Keltha. She sent it and began packing her personal belongings. Tomorrow, she would board a transport and leave Vex Prime forever. The agricultural failures were spreading. Across dozens of worlds, food production was dropping. The humans had quietly shared advanced farming techniques, solved soil problems, managed water resources, and prevented crop diseases. They had done it so smoothly that most colony administrators never realized how much they were contributing. Now, those contributions were absent, and people were going hungry. The Council attempted to redistribute food from surplus worlds to deficit worlds. But the shipping lanes were too dangerous. Pirates attacked the shipments. The food rotted in transit. The logistics were too complex. The humans had managed similar logistics for decades, coordinating food security across hundreds of worlds. They had made it look easy. It was not easy. Dr. Yara Helsing worked 18-hour days trying to coordinate medical responses to multiple epidemics. The plague on the Zephyrite worlds had been contained, but only after killing 100,000 people. Now, 3 other diseases were spreading, diseases the humans had been quietly preventing for years. She had access to all the human medical files now. The Council had finally declassified them in desperation. Reading them was an education in humility. The humans had been running the most sophisticated disease prevention network in galactic history. They had been doing it with minimal staff, almost no budget, and no public recognition. They had saved millions of lives that never knew they were in danger. How did they do this? Helsing asked her assistant. The assistant, a young Zephyrite named Kalseth, looked up from his console. They cared. That is what the files say. They saw people suffering, and they helped. They did not ask permission. They did not wait for authorization. They just helped. We should have been grateful. We should have been paying attention. The Catharan chief scientist Vexmar sent his final report on the ancient defense network. The conclusion was simple. The network could not be stopped. It would continue activating, section by section, destroying everything in its path. The Catharan home system would be reached in approximately 2 months. The entire species was evacuating. 3 million years of civilization, and they were abandoning their homeworld because they could not stop weapons left behind by a species that died before the Catharan evolved. The humans had stopped those weapons for 30 years. They had understood technology, millions of years old. They had protected the Catharan without ever asking for thanks. Now the Catharan were leaving, joining the growing tide of refugees fleeing failed worlds and spreading conflicts. Councillor Tereth stood before the council one last time. He had spent the past year documenting the collapse, compiling evidence, recording everything. He wanted future generations to understand what had happened. "We made a mistake," he said simply. "We saw the humans as a threat when they were our protection. We saw their military as aggression when it was defense. We saw their involvement as interference when it was assistance." Miraset's crystalline form was now more dark fractures than clear surface. "We know this now. It changes nothing." "It could change everything," Tereth argued. "We could send a delegation to Earth, a real one. We could admit our mistake. We could ask them to return." "They will refuse," Miraset said. "They have ignored every message we have sent. Because we have not been honest. We have asked for technical assistance and consultation. We have not admitted that we were wrong. We have not apologized. We have not asked them to come back. Pride will not allow it. Then pride will kill us." The argument continued for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. The council was too fractured to agree on anything. Some members wanted to contact Earth. Others refused. Some wanted to admit fault. Others insisted the problems were temporary. In the end, they agreed to send one final message to Earth. It was carefully worded, diplomatically phrased, and completely inadequate. The Galactic Council requests renewed dialogue with Earth regarding matters of mutual concern. We acknowledge certain operational challenges that might benefit from human expertise. We propose discussing modified terms of engagement. The response from Earth came within hours. It was shorter than any previous response had been. The Treaty of Cessation remains in force. Earth respects the Council's sovereignty. We wish you success in your endeavors. No offer of help. No suggestion of dialogue. Just respect for the treaty. The Council had demanded separation. Earth was giving them exactly that. Tereth sat alone in his office that night, looking at the reports from across Council space. 74 worlds in crisis. 5 ongoing wars. Millions of refugees. Thousands dying every day from preventable causes. All because the Council had been too proud to appreciate what they had. Too blind to see what the humans were doing. Too arrogant to believe they needed help. The humans had been the glue holding the galaxy together. Not through force or control, but through quiet service. Through doing the jobs no one else wanted to do. Through solving the problems no one else could solve. And the Council had cast them out for it. Tereth began composing his own message to Earth. Not an official one, a personal one. He did not know if it would matter. He did not know if anyone would even read it. But he needed to say it. "You tried to warn us. You tried to show us. We would not listen. We thought we knew better. We thought we were protecting ourselves from you, never realizing you were protecting us from everything else. I am sorry. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not expect help. I just wanted someone to know that at least one of us understood what we lost when you left. And I wanted to say thank you for the years you gave us. We did not deserve them." Councillor Tereth. He sent the message and turned off his console. Tomorrow the collapse would continue. Tomorrow, more worlds would fail. Tomorrow, more people would die. And the humans would remain in Sol System, honoring the treaty, respecting the Council's wishes, and moving forward with their own future. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Sometimes, the most important people are the ones you notice least. And sometimes, you only understand what you had after it is gone forever. 5 years after the withdrawal, the Grand Council chamber sat empty. Dust covered the seats where delegates from 1,000 worlds had once gathered. The translation matrix was offline. The great displays showed nothing but static. The building itself was scheduled for demolition next month, as the Council could no longer afford to maintain it. Councillor Tereth walked through the silent hall one last time. He was old now, his body failing. He had refused to leave Council territory, even as most others fled to more stable regions of space. He felt he owed it to history to witness the end. The Galactic Council still existed in name, but it governed almost nothing. Of the original 1,000-member worlds, fewer than 200 remained in any form of communication. The rest had withdrawn into isolation, formed new alliances, or simply collapsed entirely. The grand experiment of galactic unity was over. Tereth made his way to the Council archives, one of the few sections of the building still powered. He had been coming here every day for the past year, recording his observations, documenting the collapse, ensuring that future historians would understand what happened. His latest report was simple. Year 5. The center cannot hold. We are fragments now, scattered pieces of what was once a unified civilization. Some pieces are surviving. Some are even thriving in their own isolated ways. But we are no longer one galaxy. We are thousands of separate systems, each struggling alone. He paused in his recording, gathering his thoughts. The question that haunts me is simple. Could it have been different? If we had listened to the humans, if we had appreciated their contributions, if we had worked with them instead of fearing them, the answer, I believe, is yes. It could have been very different. Far from the dying council, in a region of space that had once been prosperous Vrexian territory, a small fleet of refugee ships drifted. They had been traveling for 3 months, seeking a world that would accept them. So far, every port had turned them away. Resources were too scarce. Every system was struggling to feed its own people. No one had anything to spare for refugees. The fleet commander sent out another general distress call, knowing it would likely be ignored like all the others. But hours later, a response came. Refugee Fleet Designation VX-773. This is Sol Border Station. We have received your distress call. You are cleared to approach the barrier. Prepare for inspection and processing. The commander stared at the message in disbelief. The Sol barrier was the massive defensive perimeter humanity had erected around their territory. It was said to be impenetrable. No one had been allowed through in 5 years. This is Fleet VX-773. We acknowledge, but we must ask. Will we be turned away? We have been rejected by 17 systems already. The response came quickly. No one is turned away from Sol. We process all refugees. Be advised, entry to Sol territory requires acceptance of human law and integration into human society. If you cross this barrier, you leave your old allegiances behind. Is this acceptable? The commander looked at his fleet. 50 ships, 20,000 refugees, families, children, elderly, people who had lost everything, people who just wanted to survive. It is acceptable. We are grateful for any shelter. Then welcome, the human voice said. Detailed approach vectors are being transmitted. We will guide you through the barrier. And, on behalf of humanity, welcome home. The commander did not understand the last part. How could this be home? But as his ships approached the barrier, and it opened to admit them, he saw something that made him understand. Beyond the barrier was not just Sol system, it was hundreds of systems, all connected by human-built infrastructure. The humans had not been idle during their 5-year isolation. They had been expanding, building, growing. And from what he could see on the sensors, they had been joined by others, other species, other refugees who had been accepted and integrated. The humans were building a new civilization, and they were sharing it with anyone who wanted to be part of it. But only on their terms now. No more council interference, no more ungrateful partnerships. Those who joined human space accepted human leadership, human law, and human values. It was a fair exchange. Protection and prosperity for loyalty and cooperation. Over the next years, the stream of refugees to Sol territory became a flood. Entire species made the journey. Colonies that were failing petitioned for admission. Even some former council members quietly requested integration. The humans accepted most of them, not all. Those who came seeking to exploit, who wanted benefits without contribution, who sought to recreate the old council dynamics, were turned away. But those who came seeking genuine shelter, willing to work and contribute and build together, were welcomed. On Earth, Director James Walsh stood in what had once been the Archive of Service, and was now the Integration Center. He watched the incoming refugee ships on the displays, and felt a complex mix of emotions. Should we feel vindicated? His assistant asked. They rejected us, and now they are begging to join us. Walsh shook his head. No, we should feel sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad that millions died who did not need to die. Sad that the council destroyed itself through pride and fear. They made their choice. They did, and we respected that choice. That was the right thing to do. But it still hurts to watch what happened as a result. The assistant was quiet for a moment. Do you think they understand now what we were doing for them? Some do, most still do not. They think we abandoned them. They do not understand that we gave them exactly what they asked for. Self-determination, independence from us, the freedom to govern themselves without our interference. And they chose poorly. They chose as they chose. Our job now is to build something better with those who want to be part of it. In the ruins of the council homeworld, Counselor Tereth recorded his final entry. He was dying, his body was shutting down, and the medical facilities that might have saved him no longer existed. He was ready. This will be my last recording. I wanted to end with a message for whoever finds these archives. Perhaps humans, perhaps someone else, perhaps no one, but it needs to be said. We thought we were casting out a dangerous element from our society. We thought we were protecting ourselves by removing the humans from positions of influence. We did not understand that we were amputating our own limbs. We did not see that the humans were not trying to control us. They were holding us together. The humans tried to tell us in their way. They asked why we feared their strength. They asked who we thought was protecting us from the dangers we had forgotten existed. We did not listen. We dismissed their concerns as paranoia. We saw their preparations as aggression. We interpreted their help as interference. We demanded they leave us to govern ourselves. And they respected our wishes completely. They gave us exactly what we asked for. They honored the treaty. They left us to face our problems alone. And now we endure the consequences. Perhaps that was the most human thing they could have done. They let us make our own choices, even the catastrophic ones. They respected our sovereignty, even when it doomed us. In a strange way, I suppose we should thank them for that. They treated us as equals, capable of making our own decisions and living with the results. Most species, when they grow powerful, impose their will on others. They force compliance. They demand obedience. The humans did the opposite. When we told them to go, they went. When we rejected their help, they accepted our rejection. They gave us the dignity of our own choices. I wish we had been wise enough to choose differently. To whoever finds this, learn from our mistake. When someone helps you without asking for credit, appreciate them. When someone protects you without seeking glory, value them. When someone serves quietly, notice them, because you will only truly understand what they were doing when they stop. And by then, it may be too late. Tereth reached out and stopped the recording. He sat back in his chair and looked at the empty council chamber one last time. Outside, the sun was setting on a world that would soon be abandoned entirely. The council homeworld, once the center of galactic civilization, would be left to the elements. Future archaeologists might one day explore its ruins and wonder what happened to the great civilization that built it. Tereth hoped they would find his recordings. He hoped they would learn. But mostly, he hoped that somewhere, in human space, people were building something better. Something that valued contribution over pride. something that appreciated service over ego, something that recognized the importance of those who held things together. He closed his eyes and let the darkness come. Far away, on a space station orbiting Earth, Ambassador Elena Vasquez read Tarot's personal message for the 100th time. She had received it 5 years ago, the day after the Council sent their final cold request for modified terms of engagement. She had never responded to the official Council messages, but she had quietly sent one response to Tarot's personal note, just 2 words: "We know." Because the humans had known. They had known the Council did not appreciate them. They had known their contributions were invisible. They had known that one day the Council's fear would outweigh their need. And they had prepared for it. They had built up their own infrastructure, expanded their own territory, created their own self-sufficient civilization. They had done it quietly, in the background, while still serving the Council. When the Council finally demanded their withdrawal, the humans had been ready. It hurt to leave. It hurt to watch people suffer who did not have to suffer. But the humans had learned long ago that you cannot help people who do not want to be helped. You cannot save people who resent your salvation. So they had left, and they had built something new with those who wanted to be part of it. Vasquez looked out at the expanding human sphere, at the hundreds of species now living peacefully under human coordination. It was not perfect. There were still problems, still conflicts, still challenges. But it worked because everyone involved wanted it to work. Because everyone appreciated what they had. Because everyone remembered what it was like when things fell apart. The old Council was gone, destroyed by its own pride. But from its ashes, something else was growing. Something built on mutual respect instead of resentment. On appreciation instead of fear. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had simply offered shelter to those who needed it, asked for cooperation in return, and built something together with those who were willing. It was not the ending anyone had expected 5 years ago. But it was, perhaps, the ending everyone deserved. The Council had chosen pride over wisdom, fear over trust, independence over cooperation, and they had reaped exactly what they sowed. The humans had chosen dignity over revenge, patience over anger, building over dwelling, and they too had reaped what they sowed. Silently, the humans had withdrawn, leaving the Council to endure the consequences. And silently, they moved forward into a future they built with their own hands. The galaxy turned, civilizations rose and fell, and in a modest region of space, surrounding a yellow star, humanity thrived, surrounded by those who had learned the same lesson Tareth had learned too late. Sometimes the things you notice least are the things you need most. And sometimes, respect is the greatest gift you can give.